Hello and welcome to my best bits of PMQs from this week, where we kick off with Happy St Andrew's Day to all my Scottish subscribers, and let's kick off with Gavin Newlands talking about energy prices.
Last year, Scotland exported 19 trillion watt-hours of electricity worth £4 billion to the UK grid. Yet not only do Scottish generators pay the highest grid connection charges in Europe, Scots pay amongst the highest standing charges, whilst London is by far the lowest. Our heating and lighting is switched on a lot earlier and off a lot later than the south of England. So should Scottish households be forced to shiver in the dark this winter to subsidise the richest part of the UK?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, as the honourable member will know, standing charges are a matter for Ofgem, the independent regulator. Last week they did launch a consultation asking for views.
Yes, this is the man who cancelled a meeting on the spot after being buttered about the fact that the Greek Prime Minister met with the leader of the opposition first, but with rising energy bills, apparently his hands are tied by the powerful organisation called Ofgem on this. Anyway, speaking about the Greek Prime Minister, Keir Starmer brought this up in quite a good jibe.
In an effort to hide from his failures, the Prime Minister spent this week arguing about an ancient relic that only a tiny minority of the British public have any interest in. Mr Speaker, that's enough about the Tory party.
Very good start. He then cut to the chase on the net migration figures being high, and well, our bad at politics and populism Prime Minister waffled on about he's working night and day to bring down the numbers, then used the old tried and tested Tory gaslighting line.
But all we've heard up until this moment from the honourable gentleman on this topic is a secret backroom deal with the EU that would see an additional 100,000 migrants here every year.
Mr Speaker, never mind the British Museum, it's the Prime Minister who's obviously lost his marbles. Mr Speaker.
That look happens a lot in this exchange, the forced grin, and then the head down. Very telling, isn't it? Now, Keir Starmer then highlighted the importance of meeting a fellow NATO member on a number of issues.
The Greek Prime Minister came to London to meet him, a fellow NATO member, an economic ally, one of our most important partners in tackling illegal immigration. But instead of using that meeting to discuss those serious issues, he tried to humiliate him and cancelled at the last minute. Why such small politics, Prime Minister?
Prime Minister.
Now, our Prime Minister waffled on about nothing of substance other than to say basically the Greek Prime Minister wanted a grandstand about the past, and I was butthurt about him meeting the leader of the opposition and just wanted to try and turn it into a culture war to keep my swivel-eyed loons in my party happy and see if I could use it as a stick to beat Labour with. But Starmer really turned the screw and really showed how weak he really is.
Mr Speaker, I discussed with the Greek Prime Minister the economy, security, immigration. I also told him we wouldn't change the law regarding the marbles. It's not that difficult, Prime Minister. The reality is simple. He has no...
There's that uncomfortable forced smile and head down look again. I mean, this is turning into a bit of a massacre, innit, for our Prime Minister. He also highlighted the rise in migration and no plan on boat crossings. He then highlighted the fact that firms can now undercut British workers by 20%, and that had contributed to it, hadn't it? Then a rather petulant Prime Minister jumped up and spouted that illegal boat crossings are down by a third. We all know that they're only illegal if their asylum claim has been rejected and if they've absconded, if I remember rightly. Then when our Prime Minister was in trouble, you remember he used to break the Islington North emergency glass button. I think they've realised that it's not really the zinger they thought it would be, so now they've tried a new tactic.
Just this last week he was asked which song best sums up the Labour Party. What did he come up with? Well, Mr. Speaker, he showed his true colours and chose Ode to Joy, literally the anthem of the European Union. And he will back Brussels over Britain every single time.
So let me get this straight. The Prime Minister is now saying that meeting the Prime Minister of Greece is somehow supporting the EU instead of discussing serious issues. He's just got dug further into that hole that he's made for himself. And ever, rather than deal with the facts, he's prosecuting his one-man war on reality.
Yes, this is where we are now, aren't we? I'm pretty sure Prime Minister Beethoven was born long before the European Union was around. Just saying. But that look after Starmer's reply is very telling, isn't it? They're not landing, are they? And I think he really knows it. Oh, I did hear someone make a great point, saying that the reason why they're not landing is because he doesn't believe it himself either. Anyway, Starmer then went back to the previous question and asking why won't he scrap it. Well, then our Prime Minister denied reality and then thought he brought up a zinger of a quote that Keir Starmer said when our Prime Minister was around 8. Now, did it scupper a flying confident Keir Starmer?
That we're doing. But I am surprised, Mr. Speaker, to hear him now taking this new position, because I've got a quote here from a pushy young shadow immigration minister who said, and I directly quote this person, he told this House that limits on skilled migrants are, and I quote, a form of economic vandalism. Who could possibly have taken such a bizarre position to only then U-turn? It will come as no surprise to anybody that it was him.
Mr. Speaker, there's only one party that's lost control of the borders, and they're sitting right there. And this is a government not just in turmoil, in open revolt. The Immigration Minister thinks the Prime Minister is failing because apparently nobody will listen to his secret plan. The former Home Secretary thinks he's failing because of his magical thinking. The current Home Secretary thinks he's failing. He even took time out of his busy schedule insulting people in the North East to admit he agrees with Labour. The Prime Minister seems to be the only person on the Tory benches without his own personal immigration plan. Clearly, his own side don't have any faith in him. Why should the public?
What's the first sign of madness? It's to repeat the same nonsense you've tried before and hoping for a different result, isn't it? And that's what he did. He tried to repeat the same nonsense about how under Labour and Keir Starmer, immigration would be through the roof. There was a tiny flaw in his little plan.
On their watch, migration has just trebled. And he's giving the House a lecture about targets. He's lost in La La Land. There can be few experiences more haunting for the members opposite than hearing this Prime Minister claim that he's going to sort out a problem. First, he said he'd get the NHS waiting list down. They went up. Unabashed by that, he said he'd get control of immigration. It's gone up. Following that experience, he turned his hand to bringing taxes down. And, would you believe it, the tax burden is now going to be higher than ever. It is ironic that he's suddenly taken such a keen interest in Greek culture when he's clearly become the man with the reverse Midas touch. Everything he touches turns to... maybe the Home Secretary could help me out here. Rubbish. So will the Prime Minister do the country a favour? We'll have to check the tape again, Mr. Speaker, I think. So will the Prime Minister do the country a favour, warn us what he's planning next, so we can prepare ourselves for the disaster that will inevitably follow?
Oh, talk about brutal there. But in his moment where it was his time to grandstand, take the credit for stuff that they didn't do, like half inflation and all that nonsense. Well, this is what I call absolutely hilarious.
tax cuts since the 1980s for millions of people and businesses, increased pensions and benefits, and this week secured £30 billion of new investment for this country. So he can keep trying, Mr. Speaker, to talk.
Yes, while he was saying that the country wasn't listening, his mic then turned off. You really couldn't make it up, could you? But then SNP leader Stephen Flynn went back to the energy prices again.
Mr. Speaker, in good news for kids this morning, it was snowing in Aberdeen, and when they looked out of the kitchen window, they would have been filled with delight. But for their parents, many of them who looked out the kitchen window this morning would have been filled with dread. Dread knowing that they simply can't afford to pay their energy bills. So in that context, can I ask the Prime Minister, does he regret offering no financial mechanism whatsoever towards families this winter?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, that's simply not right to say that there isn't support for families this winter. There's been considerable support this year for energy bills, and this winter, pensioner households, for example, will receive up to £300 alongside their winter fuel payment, because they're some of the most vulnerable households, and it's right that they get that support at a difficult time.
Now, I heard a great line the other day saying, you could be rubbish at politics, but be fantastic at populism like Nigel Foghorn of ignorance. Be brilliant at politics, but be rubbish at populism like Gordon Brown was. But if you are rubbish at both, you really do have a problem, don't you? And Rishi Sunak is unbelievably bad at both, isn't he? Thing is, when you're struggling to pay your bills and what your Prime Minister is basically saying, sorry plebs, you're on your own as I'm flying about in my private plane or helicopter. But it's not a good look, is it? But not long after, Lib Dem leader Ed Davey reminded our unelected Prime Minister about a 3-year-old manifesto pledge.
3 years ago, the government made a commitment to 40 new hospitals and significant upgrades to hospitals in most need. But today, many schemes are badly delayed. The Royal Berkshire, stuck at the development stage with not a single pound transferred for construction. Harrogate Hospital, still waiting on £20 million for urgent upgrades after RAC was discovered. And there are 25 more schemes, Mr. Speaker. So will the Prime Minister explain why his government is happy to let patients, doctors and nurses suffer for years in such unfit and unsafe conditions?
Mr. Speaker, we are delivering 40 hospitals by 2030. Good progress is already being made, and that programme is being backed by over £20 billion of investment. 3 schemes are already open, 2 are opening this year, and 16 are in construction or work has begun to prepare the site. It is absolutely right, though, within that we prioritise RAC hospitals as part of that. That required a reprioritisation, but that was the appropriate thing to do to ensure safety. But all patients and staff are already benefiting from some of the improvements that we've made, which comes on top of the largest capital programme for the NHS in its history, rolling out community diagnostic centres, urgent treatment centres and surgical hubs right across the country.
I would say to bollocks, Rishi Sunak. Now again, he didn't look like he even believed his own nonsense himself again, did he? 40 new hospitals, my eye. Even Ed Davey wasn't impressed either, was he? Now after Tory MPs were left with attacking underfunded Labour councils on car parking charge hikes, Labour MP Tulip Siddiq brought the subject back to what our Prime Minister had allegedly said while being Chancellor of the Exchequer. And our Prime Minister's body language was very, very telling for me while the question was being asked, and his reaction to the question is even more telling for me.
I quote, "Rishi thinks just let people die and that's okay." This was reportedly the view of the Prime Minister of COVID during late 2020, as recorded by the then Chief Scientific Advisor in his diary. This came to light last week in the COVID inquiry, and I was shocked that Downing Street didn't categorically deny it. So could I ask the Prime Minister today, how is it that people who were closest to this issue, who he worked with day in, day out, at the top of government, how on earth did these people get the impression that the Prime Minister was OK with people in our country dying?
Minister, I think he's got the question, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as the Honourable Lady knows, there is an ongoing inquiry into COVID, and it's right that that process followed, and I look forward to providing my own evidence. But if she had taken the time to actually read the evidence submitted to the inquiry, she will have seen that the person she mentioned, the Chief Science Advisor, confirmed that he did not hear me say that, and that's because I didn't.
You notice no eye contact. Twice the camera panned to our Prime Minister twice, and his head down, looking at his notes or whatever. Not once did he seem to look up, but he did seem to have a face of thunder, didn't he? He also showed that petulance again when he was put on the spot, wasn't he? Clearly rattled, wasn't he? Very interesting. But let's hear from a swivel-eyed loon partaking in some casual anti-Semitism, eh?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That 1.3 million migrants over a period of 2 years is a catastrophe for Britain is obvious to everyone apart from guilt-ridden bourgeois liberals and greed-driven globalists.
Yeah.
Just say the Jews, John. Whenever people say globalists, they basically mean Jews, don't they, Mr. Hayes? And finally, remember this question last week?
Why are 34% of children in my constituency living in poverty? Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's this government that has ensured that across our country 1.7 million fewer people are living in poverty.
Yes, that was a time when our Home Secretary put his foot in it literally. Well, did you hear our Prime Minister's reply? Now, in that video, I showed that his statistics were right to a certain degree. Well, Labour MP Alison McGowen brought up the similar question, and surely our Prime Minister will not use the same dodgy statistics again to push his own narrative. Surely not.
Mr. McGowen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In response to my friend for Stockton North last week, the Prime Minister claimed that the best way to stop children living in poverty is for them to have parents who work. But, Mr. Speaker, over 70% of poor children already live in a home where someone goes out to work. So I'll give him another chance. Can he explain why reports say that 1 million of our children in 2022 experienced not just poverty, but destitution?
Well, Mr. Speaker, no child should grow up in poverty, and that's why I'm pleased that because of the measures we've taken, 1.7 million fewer people are living in poverty today than in 2010.
Prime Minister, she's talking about children, not people. Also, fact check picked this up for the second week and said Rishi Sunak's claim about government's record on poverty fact checked for the second week in a row during Prime Minister's questions, where the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, said 1.7 million fewer people are living in poverty today than in 2010. As we've previously explained, this is correct based on one measure of poverty, but others offer a different picture. Mr. Sunak's figure is based on the number of people in absolute poverty after housing costs, which has fallen by 1.7 million since 2009 and 2010 according to the latest DWP figures published in March. Looking at another measure, the number of relative poverty after housing costs, however, is up by 900,000 over the same period. And they said, we wrote about the different ways of measuring poverty in this fact check about a different claim back in June. Sorry for repeating myself, but friends, you know. But that's my best moments of PMQs, best questions for me. And there was and that was an absolute mullering as well, wasn't it, for our Prime Minister. Some actually did say that was Keir Starmer's best performance at PMQs. But what do you guys think? Let me know down below. And I shall just leave the video here, and I shall bid you farewell and take care, my friends.